Saint Jerome was a priest and theologian in the fourth and fifth century. He's credited with translating most of the Bible into Latin. If you are familiar with Catholicism, you would know this name, the Vulgate. This is the translation that Saint Jerome came up with and translated from the original language into Latin. And the Vulgate was really the Bible of the Roman Catholic Church for generations, for centuries, and it's been edited now and changed in the mid 1900s. But I want to show you a picture this morning. This is a statue of Saint Jerome. This statue is located outside the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. I've talked about this church often, but in Israel and all throughout the Middle East, anywhere there's a holy site or where they believe is a holy site, what would happen for preservation is they would build a church over it, like just right on the top of that place. Like it doesn't feel as holy like when you go to it. I know it sounds weird to see like a church is not holy, but when you think like I'm going to go where there's a possibility that Jesus was crucified, and like you're all excited, right? And you show up and there's this big giant church on top of the place where Jesus might have been crucified, and you're like, whoa, wow, that just doesn't have the same kind of umph that I was looking for, right? I was thinking of like maybe there's just one spot, this hill, nobody's touched it, it's been preserved for 2,000 years. But this is one of those places. The Church of the Nativity is where they believe, tradition says, that Jesus was born in a cave that is underneath this church now. This church was redone by in the Byzantine era, and this statue has been there for many, many years now. If you look at the bottom of the statue, really closely, if you could zoom in, I know they can't, I said that like you could, Rory, I apologize. But if you could zoom in, on the bottom of that statue, you would see a skull. Now, skulls are not something like in my house, we were never allowed to have anything that had a skull on it, right? Like if there was an album, it could be a Christian album. It have a skull? Nope, out of the house. It's evil. Like skulls were not something that we were allowed to be around, celebrate, talk about, look at, nothing. And evidently, that is not the case for St. Jerome, because he would tie a skull, tradition says, that he would tie a human skull to his leg as he went about his day-to-day life. He did this purposefully to remind himself of the shortness or the brevity of life. That life is short, and I don't have time to waste on anything else but the kingdom of God. Think about the power of that. Could you imagine what you would be called if you walked around Magnolia, Texas with a skull chained to your leg every day, walking through HEB, just clank, 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 like you're going to be the crazy person. The manager's going to show up, try to figure out what's happening and who are you and what are you trying to do to this place. If you were to show up at church with this skull, you're obviously evil, right? But St. Jerome's life verse was Psalms 90:12, which says, "So teach us to number our days that we may present to you a heart of wisdom." Teach us to number our days so that we may present to you a heart of wisdom. It was this kind of focus and passion that helped St. Jerome to do incredible things for the kingdom. And so, if life is short, and I know for young people, they have a hard time with that question, right? Like, is life short? They're like, no, because it feels like it takes 15 years to get out of just high school sometimes, right? You don't realize how short life can be, but the older you get, and I know that I'm still young, and some of you people in the room would think, you don't even know yet. Life happens fast. It is short, it is quick, it is moving as fast as we can even fathom and imagine. But if it is short, and we know that it is, then we don't have time to waste on things that don't make a difference in the kingdom of God. So how do we live in this tension of our lives being busier than ever? Do you feel that? Do you feel like that life is getting busier and busier, that life is just speeding past us at times? Like, I talk about it often, but it kind of gets that speed wobble to us. You know that, you ever seen somebody that's riding a skateboard down the hill in like California, and everything's going really well, right? They're flying down the hill, and all of a sudden the skateboard starts to shake. You ever see that? And boom, and they just fall off because the speed wobble takes them. That's the kind of feel that it has with life at times. It's got like the wheels are wobbling, the balance is off because we're running so fast and things are going so quickly. How do we live in this tension of being busier than ever, but also feeling the call to work in God's kingdom? How do we do these things together? Because we all have jobs. You have a role, you have responsibilities. Even if you don't have a full-time job, you have some kind of responsibility, whether it be in your home, in your community. There's responsibilities that we have, but we are also called to work in God's kingdom. Now, the tension for you that are not called to be a pastor or a theologian or a missionary is, yes, your job is not, you're not getting paid to do the ministry. So how do you live in that tension of, I want to serve God's kingdom, but I also have responsibilities and job and all the things that I have to take care of and am responsible for? One of the most common phrases that we hear today is this, is that I'm too busy. Have you ever said that? It's an important question because we have to learn as we go, right? We have to learn to say no to some good things, don't we? If you are to balance your life well, then you are going to have to learn to say no to some things and yes to others. That's just the reality. That's maturity and being able to say, no, I can't make that. I can't do that. Like for Lindsay and I, being in ministry, on Saturday nights, we don't do anything with anybody. Why? Because Sunday morning is our work day. That's one of our work days. And so Saturday night, we don't do things on Saturday night because Sunday morning comes really early. That's a decision we have. We have to say no to things so that we can say yes to Sunday mornings. And so you have those same things. We have to say yes, we have to say no. But as life is moving fast, and we think about that I'm too busy is something that we all feel. Calendars fill up, task lists are lengthy. But how is it that we are too busy, but we have the same amount of time that previous generations have had? Think about that question for a moment. How is it that we are too busy, but we have the same amount of time that previous generations had, and we also have better opportunities? Although it may not feel like it, life expectancy is one of the highest points that it has ever been in the history of humanity, unless you're reading Genesis. Right? Because in Genesis, you're like, 900 years? I don't even want to think about living 900 years. That sounds horrible. But you look now, it's like we have a longer life expectancy. Modern medicine has improved our life and the length of our life and the quality of our life. That's good. That's good news. Like that's things that we want to hear. We also have tools and apps that help us to manage our time and productivity. Like you just go to Google and say productivity apps, and you're gonna have 50 apps that are gonna say you can do more with your life. And you're like, I don't want to do more. I believe that part of the problem is that we try to squeeze everything into time blocks. How do we live in that tension? We squeeze everything into time blocks, right? Instead of seeing our whole life as time that is God's, we end up compartmentalizing our work life, our personal life, our God life, and we end up forgetting, and we can forget that Jesus has called us to lay down our lives as believers. When you read the Gospels, you know what Jesus never says? He never says, lay down your life for the gospel if you work in the church. He doesn't say, lay down your life for the gospel if you are a missionary. It doesn't say that. There is no disclaimer, is there? He said, I want you to lay down your life. I want you to give me your life. Sacrifice everything. Let the dead bury the dead. Don't worry about what's in the past. I want you to move forward. You're not going to have even a place to lay your head. That's the kind of drive that Jesus calls us to, but there's that tension, right? Because I get that. That was the first century. It's probably a little bit different, but how do we do that in 2022? And so today we're starting a 5-week series titled Made for Mission. Mission, as Josh spoke about a few weeks ago, is a word that kind of gets thrown around in the church. We throw this word around like you need to be on mission. Like, okay, that's great. That sounds awesome. What does that mean? I don't know. But you need to be on mission. That's the kind of feel that we get. And Josh talked about that very well a couple weeks ago, that we talk about it in the church. We put it in our values. But what does it look like for a follower of Jesus to really live on mission? And over the next 5 weeks, we're going to talk about this, and we're going to walk through a way and some steps that we can be on mission. But here's the thing, is that we want to put it in actionable steps for each of us. We want to put it in some steps that all of us in this room that we can gather and we say, you know what, I can do that. I can be a part of that, because sometimes we have these lofty goals and words and phrases that we throw out there, and it can feel unattainable at times. But what does it look like for us to be on mission? And so this series, as we go through it, this is an adaptation of a book titled Bless. by Dave Ferguson and his brother John. And so we want to make sure we give credit where credit is due. If you want to purchase the book, you can purchase the book. But this is a simple way for us to love our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers. This is a simple way for us to put some actionable steps to what we would say is mission. All right? And so here's this slide. As we look at work over this acronym over the next 5 weeks, we're going to start with begin with prayer this morning, the first one. But it's bless. Begin with prayer, listen with care, eat together, serve, and then share your story. These are all things that we can do together, simple but actionable, that we can do as a church family, we can do individually or as families. That we can make these things happen in our community. And so here's the deal. Is that what we don't want this to be is we don't want this to be just a few good sermons that we feel like, oh, that's motivating, I like that, and then nothing happened beyond that. We want this to be very practical. We want this to be very, very applicable to who you are and where you're at and what you're doing with your life right now. And so here's what we're going to ask you to do. If you have not already, we're going to force you to download the Collective Church app in the App Store, okay? And I'll explain why here in a moment. If you go to your App Store or the Google Play Store, you can even do it now if you feel unspiritual. But you can go to the App Store and search for Collective Magnolia, download the app, and here's why we're going to encourage you to do that. We're going to, each week as we go through this series, we're going to have some actionable steps for you to walk away with that Sunday. And so today we're going to talk about praying, and what does that look like when we're talking about praying for people is in regards to living on mission. So in the app, if you were to open it up, there's the tab on the very top says Made for Mission. Each week after that Sunday, you can click on the acronym letter that we covered that week, and we're going to ask you to fill some stuff out. I know people like, I don't want the government to have my information. I don't want the church to have my information. But listen, we're not going to do anything crazy with your information. That's bad, sorry. But we're not going to do anything with your information. But this is just a simple way for us to, one, keep you accountable. We want this to be practical and keep you accountable. And so as we talk about what we're going to talk about today, when we leave here today, we're going to encourage you, take this next step, download the app, fill out the blessed part of it, the begin with prayer part, and I'll explain what that is here in just a little bit. Your job and your role in this series, as we interact together over these next 5 weeks, is to report numbers and names in the links that are in the app. Okay, so under begin with prayer, we're going to ask you, and I'll talk about it more later, we're going to ask you to have 10 names of unsaved people that you are praying for on a daily basis. All right, so that's what we want you to report over this next week. So we're going to give you 7 days till next Sunday. If you don't, then don't show up next Sunday, okay? I'm feeling spicy this morning. I don't know why. And I don't know why I just said spicy, but maybe it's because I can't taste anything since COVID. And that's the only thing I can taste. I don't think it's sad, isn't it? We're going to do this together. And here's the thing. What we're going to ask is we're going to ask for 75 days. 75 days. This Sunday to Easter Sunday is 75 days. We didn't plan it that way. It just worked out really cool. 75 days, unless I miscounted, which is very possible. But 75 days from now until Easter Sunday, that we're going to try to accomplish the goals that we set out in these 5 weeks. We're going to try to set out and accomplish the goals. And here's why. Here's why this is important. As we talk about mission, why take 5 weeks to talk about mission, a phrase that kind of gets thrown around and jumbled around in the church world? I believe that this is so important to who we are as a church family, that this is a catalyst for us as a church. This is of a very important value to us as a church family, to understand and to know how we can live on mission together. It matters. Luke chapter 10, verses 1 through 2. Start there this morning. We're going to kind of jump around. Typically, if you're new at this, typically what we would do is we would walk through like a book of the Bible, study that book, and just kind of take passage by passage and work through it verse by verse. This series is going to be a little bit different. There's going to be some jumping around here and there, but I promise it's still Christ-centered. Chapter 10 of Luke, verses 1 through 2, very popular passage, says this. And after this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place to every town and place where he himself was about to go. And he said to them, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into this harvest. So according to Jesus, the problem that we face is not that there's not a harvest. The problem is not that there's not a harvest and that there's not lost people, because the reality is there are plenty of lost people in our world, aren't there? We sense that, like in the world of politics, like in the world of ethics and morality, like we can see that, like sometimes where common sense goes out the window, that we can see that there are plenty of lost people in our world. We understand that, we feel that. And so there's people that are living for themselves, not surrendered to the love and rule of Jesus. But the problem that Jesus says is that there's not enough laborers. There's not enough laborers. There's not enough workers, which if you are in the workforce today, you probably sense that a little bit more in 2022 than we have in a long time, don't you? You walk into any restaurant, right? Every restaurant is understaffed right now. They're stressed out. Your food's taking long. Why is my food taking longer? We've got 3 people working the entire restaurant. Oh, I'm so sorry, So all the things that we're feeling. You walk into any store, and what is the first thing you see? Now hiring. Everywhere there's this labor shortage that we're feeling and walking through and trying to navigate as a culture and as a country. But the reality is that the church has been short on laborers for far too long. The church has been short on laborers for far too long. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to just settle for a Sunday-only version of Christianity that we have created in America. I don't want to settle for just Sunday morning, an hour serving and coming to church and that's it, I've got it. I've got my hour, I've got God for the week. I don't want to settle for that. And from the start of our church, we have said and we have believed that we want to develop a generations of everyday followers. That phrase is very important to us, everyday followers, because we want to push back against the cultural Christianity that says that it's only on Sunday, that that's all we do, that's all we pay attention to. That's not what we want to focus on. We want to focus on Monday through Saturday. We want you following Jesus, falling in love with him on your own time, in your own personal walk with the Lord, living for his kingdom. That's what we want to see. Every day means that we give God our all. That the rest of life comes secondary to the call that God has given us. That Jesus isn't something that we sprinkle on top of our current life like a seasoning, but that we reorient our whole life where Jesus becomes the main course of our life. Do you feel that difference? That we've I believe that many times we've set the bar so low in the church world that we would say, just do this and the bare minimum and that's it. And it's not that it's do more, but it is that God calls us to something greater than just an hour. And so as we dive into this first letter of this acronym, Bless, Be, Begin with Prayer, let's look at Luke chapter 4. Skip back a couple of chapters. Luke chapter 4. And Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from Jordan, and he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. Short verse, but a couple of quick things. This is right when Jesus was going to fast and pray in the wilderness for 40 days, as he was going to fast and pray, and the Lord, the devil was going to tempt him. All the things that we read about, he tempts him with power and authority and all the things that Jesus already had, but he was trying to give him worldly authority and worldly power. And Jesus, in the end of his fasting and praying, right, we know the story, he resists and he quotes scripture back to the enemy, and he sustains and drives through and gives us an example of what it looks like to live a Christ-honoring life. What does this verse show us, though, in regards to mission? When we think about, it says he was led to the wilderness by the Spirit. That just before Jesus started his ministry, he was led into this desert to pray, to be tempted by the devil. But before his mission started, Jesus began with prayer. Before his mission began, Jesus began with prayer. And if Jesus is to begin his mission with prayer, shouldn't that be our model as well? Shouldn't our model, before we talk about mission life and living on mission or being made for mission or doing work in the kingdom, should we not have started our life with prayer as well? Should be our model. Now, we often talk about sharing the gospel, reaching the lost, and we encourage you to do that. But rarely do we ever talk about starting it with prayer. We talk about sharing the gospel and witnessing to your friends and proclaiming, but what would it look like for us to start any type of evangelism or any type of mission work and to start it off with prayer? Now, for some of us in the room, we might hear that and say, like, well, that sounds a little elementary, doesn't it? That sounds like that sounds a little elementary. Of course we should start with prayer. Like that's the first thing that we should do. But the question is not if we should start with prayer. The question is, are we starting with prayer? See, here's a problem with the church, the current church. This is not just America. This, I believe, worldwide for many churches across our world. We are obsessed with knowledge and information. We are obsessed. We have more knowledge and information, but what we are lacking is obedience to that information and knowledge. Do you feel that? It's yes, there's knowledge. Yes, there's wisdom. Yes, there's information. But it's not if we should obey. It's if we are obeying. If we are praying. That's the next step. If you like, many times in our world, in our churches, we say things like, "I just wish that we would go deeper," while at the same time not obeying what we have already learned. It is an important step of our relationship with the Lord, and so. If we are to live in mission, we need to start it off with prayer. And so before we dive in, we have to ask ourselves that question. So here's another question for us. I'm going to ask a lot of questions today. I want this to be internal for you. I want it to sink deep into your hearts. What does it look like to be on mission? To see unsaved people come in to know Christ through our prayers and through our proclaiming of the gospel? What does it look like? And here's the answer, I believe, is that it has to start with lost people. If we are to focus on mission and to say that we are made for mission and we are going to be on mission, it has to start with lost people. And so here's the question for us, another question for us. I want you to write this one down. How many lost people do you know? How many unsaved people do you know? And this is not meant to alienate or to point out or to label people. Like we don't walk around in our community like, yeah, you're lost. Like that's not how we act, right? We don't want that kind of mentality and that kind of attitude. But how many lost people do you really know? I'm not talking about just people that you see on Facebook, because Lord knows there's plenty of them on Facebook, isn't there? We've done this activity a few times with the pre-launch of the church and in some discipleship settings. But if I was to give you a paper right now and say, I want you to write 10 names of the lost people and unsaved people that you know in your life, how quickly could you fill it out? How quickly could you fill it out? I remember the first time I was asked this, even as a pastor. I was in a group setting with other pastors and the facilitator of this training, and this facilitator got up and he asked us this question, and he says, I want you to write 10 names down of unsaved people that you know right now. And I was offended by the question. I was like, what do you mean? I'm a pastor. I know plenty of lost people, right? That's not a joke at you guys, I promise. But I'm thinking in my mind, like, yeah, I know lost people. Like, there was this assumption in my life that I had that just because I was in ministry, that I obviously knew lost people and unsaved people. Like, why would you ask me that question? I'm like, give me that paper. And so I start to write down, and quickly I realized and I understood it was a humbling and a convicting moment as I started to write that I couldn't get to just a few names. And when I say no, I'm not talking about like I see them on Facebook or I bumped into them at HEB. I'm talking like, how many lost people do you know? That's the question. It's convicting. It's humbling. Here's the challenge, I believe. The longer that we are Christ followers, the temptation becomes to insulate ourselves inside the walls of the church. The longer that we are Christ followers, the temptation becomes to insulate ourselves inside the walls of the church and say, like, this is it, right? This is all that I'm doing. And this is, what it is we isolate ourselves to only being with Christ followers. We isolate ourselves to only being with people that are like-minded with us, that only believe what we believe, that only talk about what we talk about, only watch and follow what we follow. Like that. That's what we want. We insulate ourselves to only Christ-centered community, and that's it. Now, I don't want you to misunderstand me. because Christ-centered community matters. I want you to hear that very clearly. Christ-centered community matters. But we have to be careful. We cannot allow Christian community to isolate us from the very people that we are called to reach. I want to say that again. We cannot allow Christ-centered community to isolate us from the very people that we are called to reach. That's convicting. That's hard to hear. This is one of those sermons, right? You're going to leave and it's like the toes are hurting a little bit, right? It's like, I was hoping for an encouraging message this morning. I got all dressed and I came here. But this is just the reality of where we are. We've isolated ourselves from the people that we are trying to reach. How can we live on mission if we don't purposefully know and interact with people that don't know Jesus? We can't. It's impossible. And I believe that's why far too many people settle for just fire insurance salvation. Is because instead of living in God's mission, we end up settling for like, I'm saved and I'm good now. Like I've got this thing now. I can go to heaven. It's great. I love the way that the disciple Mark writes in his gospel, Mark 16, with the Great Commission. He says this, and he said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. Go proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. This is not a call just for the disciples in the first century. This is a call for you and I as well. To go into the world and to proclaim the gospel, to preach the good news of Jesus. Like that is the mission that God has given each of us. But here is why we believe that having relationships with people not saved is important. Yes, sharing the gospel everywhere we go is important. It matters. You go to the grocery store, you're at the checkout line, and if you have a decent-sized family like me, it takes a little while, right? You got a captive audience. Go to the gas station and you're sitting at the pump next to somebody. Those are opportunities to strike up a conversation, to weave in the gospel into what you're saying and doing. Those are important, but sharing the gospel in the context of relationships seems to be way more effective than shouting with the bullhorn anywhere else. And so as we start this series by committing to building relationships with the unsaved and by praying for them, here's the thing. We pray for two reasons. The first is this. I want you to write this down. When we pray for others, it changes us. When we pray for others, it changes us. What if every day we made a conscious decision to pray for 10 lost people in our lives every day? We woke up and we said, I'm going to say these people by name, that the Lord would open up doors for me to have conversations, to serve them, to love them, to eat in our home. Like every day I'm going to say those things because this goes so well with our fourth core value that we talked about last week, conscious living. Paying attention to the world around us, living as if we are paying attention to what is happening around us and the sins and the needs of our community. What if we started it with prayer? Living with eyes wide open, paying attention. It centers us around mission. But what many end up doing is we walk around in our lives spiritually sleepwalking. I go on Sunday, I've got an hour, and then the rest of the week, I'm good. I'm going to work, I'm going home, and I'm not paying attention to the things that God has called me to do. That can be the temptation for us, for all of us. I want you to hear me. I'm preaching to myself this morning. I am not excluded from this message. But here's the reality for us. As we are talking about praying for others and living this life on mission, we forget many times that God has called us to something greater than an hour a week. He's invited us. He's called us to join in on his mission. And I know this has the temptation to feel a little bit like do more, do better, like the do better from your parents talk, like that we don't like, no one likes to hear. It can have that kind of feel, but I want it to go from do more to join in. I think that's a big distinction that we need to make. Instead of just doing more, it's join in on the mission that God has called us to be a part of. Join in. And so we start with prayer. Not only does it set our hearts and minds to live on mission, but as we pray for other people, but it also connects us to the only one that can do the saving. The temptation with gospel work or mission work or trying to see people that you know come to know Christ is that we can feel like that it is all dependent upon us. when we take time and we pray for the people that we're trying to reach, we are quickly reminded and we are connected to the only one that can do the saving. For many people in our lives that are unsaved, your role may be just to water and plant that seed for years and years and years. And then one day, somebody comes along, shares the gospel with them, and the seed and the watering that you've done, there's fruit to it, and boom, they're saved. For some, you may water and you may plant, you may do all the things, and you know what? You get an opportunity to lead them to salvation. What a gift that would be, right? What a gift that is. So we start with prayer. It sets our minds on mission, and it connects us to the one that does the saving. One of my least favorite things to do as an adult is to go to the dentist. Anybody else with me? I just don't go. I hate it that much. I really do. I hate it because every time I go, they're like, "You should have been here 3 years ago." I know. I feel it. My bank account's going to feel it too, right? It's just the reality of, I just don't like it, so I don't go. I'm an avoider sometimes. I also don't like the doctor. I don't, when I fill out the forms, like, "Well, who's your primary doctor?" I'm like, I haven't had one since I was a kid. I don't know. I go to the urgent care, right? That's my doctor. That's Dr. Z. I don't know. It's the person that's on call. The reality is both doctors and dentists ask questions that we don't want to answer. What is the dentist going to do when you sit back in that chair? They're, like, "Have you been flossing every day?" You know you can't lie. You're like, "What do you think, buddy?" Once a month at best. That's all I got. I had kernels stuck in my teeth, and I finally decided to floss. What is the doctor going to ask you? "How's your diet been?" You see, it's great. It's going fantastic. Not many of us can answer those questions with confidence, can we? Prayer is one of those spiritual disciplines that can feel like that at times. I have a long ways to go in the area of prayer. But the question that we should be asking ourselves, and I want to ask myself and yourself this morning, is, how's your prayer life? Who are you praying for? Kind of has that feel, right? It's like, well, it's okay. I don't know, maybe. Yes, I sometimes pray. Can it feel like that? Does it feel a little bit like, the dentist is kind of asking me these tough questions? But prayer is one of the most important disciplines. Let's look at 1 John chapter 5, verse 14 to 15. It'll be on the screen. And this is the confidence that we have toward him, that if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us whenever we ask, we know that we have requests that we have asked of him. Meaning this, we can take comfort in the truth that when we pray, God, the creator of the universe, hears our prayers. I love what my friend Francois said one day in small group. He said before he spends time in prayer, he likes to just remind himself and say, who am I about to talk to? I'm about to talk to the creator of the universe. That's the kind of discipline and question that will create a sense of awe in our lives. The familiar becomes extraordinary when you start to ask that kind of question. Who am I about to talk to? The creator of the universe. And I don't know about you, but I'm just crazy enough to believe that what must move God's heart is a believer that is intentionally praying for the unsaved. Intentionally praying to a God that says that he's not willing that any should perish. I believe that moves God's heart. It changes us. Here's the second thing I want you to write down, is that when we pray for others, God uses us to change the world. When we pray for others, God uses us to change the world. When we are praying for the lost, we won't have to wait for one of those moments that just grabs our attention. Like, I don't know if you've had these moments where you're walking through the grocery store, you're at the gas station, you're at the pump, or you're somewhere at a restaurant, and you feel impressed upon by the Lord to go and share something with somebody. Like the Lord might tell you, like I want you to go tell that person that God loves them. Have you ever had those moments? You ever declined those moments? If we're honest, we're probably have all done that before. Like, I don't want to do that. The introvert side of us kind of rises up, and we're like, I don't know. I might literally die if I have to do that. Here's the truth for all of us is that if we spend time praying for the unsaved moments, we won't have to just rely on those wow, attention-grabbing moments. Because we will live in those moments with people that we know. You see the difference? Those moments will happen, and I pray and I hope that we listen to them. I pray that we will listen to them and understand them and follow through with what the Lord calls us to do in those moments. But we won't have to rely just on special moments anymore because we'll be living in those moments with people. Let's look at I want you to hear what Dave Ferguson, the author of the book, said. If you are not regularly praying for people by name, I doubt God will use you to help change them. Ouch. It stings, doesn't it? It's like a good spiritual slap to the face. Like, oh, like I got it. Like it's there. I feel it. Yes. But I believe it to be true as well. We want change. We want to see our friends and our family change. We want to see our coworkers. Some of y'all have some coworkers that you know like they need Jesus, right? You want to see that change. You want to see God grab their attention and grab their heart and their soul and their mind. Like, I've got something better for you. And so you want that. But what we're trying to say is we want you to pray for that. Because when we pray, then God's going to use you. Praying for the lost sets our mind on mission, and it gives us a sense that no matter where we go, we're going for the Lord. I was talking about that tension of how do you have a job, full-time job, and responsibilities and roles and all that. How do you have all those things while also knowing that you're working for the kingdom? This is it. It's that wherever you go, you are going for the Lord. Your hard work and your character at your workplace, guess what it's doing? It is opening up doors for a conversation and an opportunity to share the gospel. It matters. It makes a difference. Listen to what missionary C.T. Studd said. He said, only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. C.T. Studd was a missionary that served in China, India, Africa. And after receiving a large inheritance, I've shared his story before, but received a large inheritance from his family, he gave it all away. Because he wanted to live like the people that he was reaching. Gave it all away for the kingdom of God. God wants to use you. He wants to use all of us. We just have to be willing. We have to be willing to be used and willing to put our lives into action for mission and for the kingdom of God. To not get to the end of our life and realize like I've wasted so much of my life on things that are meaningless and don't matter in the kingdom of God. I mean, think about all, like, this is not to say that we don't have personal goals and things that we want to accomplish. Like those things can be important and they can be godly. But when we get to the end of our life, you know what we can't take with us? We can't take money, we can't take possessions, we can't take good memories. All those things don't matter. It's just people. It's just souls for the kingdom. There is nothing extraordinary about any of the great kingdom workers that we read about. C.T. Studd or Hudson Taylor in China as well. First missionary to China. Nothing is extraordinary about these people other than they were just willing to work for the kingdom of God. And they gave their life to the mission of God. And here's my question for us today. Are you willing to submit to the truth that you are made for mission? Are you willing to submit to the truth that you were made for mission? Are you willing to say, yes, Jesus, I will answer the call? Because this is what it all boils down to. When we regularly pray for the lost, we stop seeing people as a project and they become our mission. We stop trying to fix people, but we start to let God fix them. Corrie ten Boom, if you've never read any of her work, it is a gift to the kingdom to read her work, I promise. Go buy every book that she's ever written. every book about her. She said this: we never know how God will answer our prayers, but we can expect that he will get us involved in his plan for the answer. So many times we want to pray and like, God, could you do this? I think sometimes God just stands back and he's like, I've been waiting on you to do it. If we will be willing to pray for the lost, then we're going to see how God is going to use us to win the lost. And as Josh said a few weeks ago, all the things that we say are important, goals and things that we strive for and we work for, and careers and accomplishments, all those things that we achieve, they, as Paul says, they are all what? Rubbish. They're all lost. They are all meaningless if not done for Christ. Team, you can come. So here's our goal for the next 75 days. I'm going to ask you to do what is challenging. I'm going to ask you to write a list of 10 unsaved people that you are going to be regularly praying for. And then church-wide, what we would say is that we would have as a church, we want to have 750 people that we as a church family are regularly praying for by name to see them come to know Jesus. So this morning on the stairs, we have some papers on the stage here that I'm going to ask in a moment. I'm going to ask you to come take one of those papers with you. It says My 10 on it, and it says Made for Mission. And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to ask you to do two things. I'm going to ask you to take a paper. I'm going to ask you to take it home, pray about it. And to really pray about it. Who are the 10 unsaved people in my life? And for some of us, we may not get to 10. That's okay. It may be a progress for us that we say, you know what, I may not be able to get to 10 right now, but in 6 months, I'm going to have 20 people because I'm going to be intentional about it. For some of you, that's going to come quick, right? You're going to have 10 people. You're like, I know 10 people right now. I've been trying to get them to come to church every Sunday. It's going to come naturally. But I want you to take it home. I want you to pray it out. If you can fill it out now, you can, but I want you to do it prayerfully if you do. The second thing I'm going to ask you to do is this really is going to be the help for the series. I want you to go on the app, and when you have your 10 people, I want you to go on there, and I want you to type in their first name only. We don't want to know their last name. This is not for us to, like, when that one of your 10 comes to church, this is not for us to say, hey, John Smith, we've been praying for you. It's time for you to get saved. That's not what this is for. Now, we want to celebrate when that happens, right? When you bring one of your 10 to church, we want you to come find us like, one of my 10 is here today. I've been working on them. I've been praying with them. They've been in my house eating dinner. Like, look, they're here. That's the best news a preacher could hear. I'm like, yes. You set the tee up for us. Like, do those things. But we want you to put their first name only. So go on the app, write your name, your email, the 10 names of the people that you're going to be praying for. On your paper, you can write your full names. Put it on your fridge. Just might want to take it down when they show up for dinner. Put it somewhere, maybe in your bathroom where you'll see it. See it every day, that you'll be reminded to pray for them. Pray over it and begin to fill it out. And then as you fill those things out, and I want us to think about this for a moment. For the next 75 days, if 75 adults will commit to praying for the lost daily, for their 10, we as a church will daily be praying for 750 lost people in our communities. Think about the power of that for a moment. This is the beauty of community. When we do it together, when we serve together, and we put our focus on mission together as a church, it's intentional. And I really believe this, that this series, these goals, these steps that we're going to take, that it's going to be a catalyst for revival in our church. And when I say revival, I mean seeing people that are far from Jesus laying everything down on the altar to say yes to him for the first time ever. People that you would be shocked at, like there's no way they'll ever give their life to the Lord, but we will see it. I believe it. I'm praying for it. I'm going to stand with all of us in this room. I'm going to say, yes, we're going to see people that are so far from the Lord giving their lives to Christ. And I pray that you'll feel the same. I hope you feel that burden